Brian, anything that you heard me say, I'll start with you, where you're like, no, I can answer that. That's not what we think now.
The only thing I can say is, and this could change at any moment, but the sources I have close to the investigation say that they are not close to solving this, and that any reporting that you are seeing that says they are closing in on someone is just flat out wrong. There is no suspect. They are not closer, I am told, to or close to figuring out who the suspect is. There isn't like a list of people and they think it's one of these 5 or something like that. And they're still chasing down leads. I'm told, they had all these tips that came in initially. They're still going through that stack and they're going back to ones that they ignored in the beginning. So I don't want to say they're not making any progress, because they are. I mean, there's this whole task force that was put together. It's like 5 or 6 Pima County detectives and a bunch of FBI agents, and they work out of the FBI office in Tucson. And the detectives that work for the sheriff's office don't even go to the sheriff's office anymore. They all meet at the Tucson FBI office, I'm told, and they're focused and they're working on this every day.
A single strand of hair. That's what investigators pulled from inside Nancy Guthrie's home. Not a weapon, not a confession. Just one thin strand, small enough to overlook, and now possibly the biggest break in a case that has haunted a family for months. Before we go further, if you're new here, welcome to 3 True Crime Stories. This channel is dedicated to breaking down real investigations with care and accuracy, and if you want to stay with us through every twist in this case, hit subscribe and tap that like button right now. It genuinely helps this story reach more people who might have information. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was last seen on January 31st, 2026, dropped off at her Tucson, Arizona home by her daughter Annie and son-in-law Tommaso. She vanished sometime in the early hours of February 1st and was reported missing after she failed to appear for a virtual church service she never missed. What followed was chaos. A doorbell camera captured a masked man approaching her front door. Blood was found at the scene, later confirmed through DNA testing to be hers. Ransom notes arrived, one claiming she had died. Investigators later learned a man had fabricated some of those notes entirely, adding confusion to an already devastating case. Gloves found near the home raised hope until testing revealed they belonged to a restaurant worker with no connection to Nancy at all. Every family member, every spouse, has been officially cleared, and for months that left investigators with almost nothing solid to hold on to until the hair. That strand was sent first to a private lab in Florida, then to the FBI's laboratory at Quantico, a facility reserved for evidence serious enough to eventually face courtroom scrutiny. Genetic genealogist CeCe Moore has spoken publicly about this exact category of evidence. Years ago, a hair without its root would have told investigators almost nothing. Today, newer sequencing methods can sometimes pull a usable genetic profile from fragments once considered useless. Moore has pointed to the Gilgo Beach investigation as proof this science works, referencing labs like Astrea Forensics, which have successfully extracted profiles from rootless hair in other major cases. That doesn't mean this hair belongs to a suspect. It could belong to Nancy herself, a relative, or anyone with an innocent reason to have been inside that home. But if it doesn't, it could become the first real lead this case has had in months. Sheriff Chris Nanos has said publicly that he believes an arrest will eventually happen, not that one is imminent, not that a name exists, just that the case remains active, and investigators remain committed. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Her family is still waiting. And somewhere inside a lab, one strand of hair might be the thing that finally answers the question no one has been able to answer since February. If you want to follow this case as new details emerge, subscribe to 3 True Crime Stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.
So Andrew, put your keen investigative sense that deduced what my night was like into this story. That guy doesn't come across as a polished pro. And if this was about money, what happened?
Yeah, watching that video at the front door of Nancy's home, he was bumbling, doing strange things like trying to disable the camera using foliage
Weeds.
to try to just a strange, unsophisticated looking individual. It's clear he planned it because he did take great effort in trying to disguise his appearance, but that holster that was dangling in front of his pants, all the other action, did not seem like a sophisticated individual.
The blood on Nancy Guthrie's porch tells a different story than the hair found inside her home. If the hair could someday reveal who was there, the blood may explain what happened in the final seconds before she vanished. And when investigators looked closely at that blood, one theory began to take shape, offered by someone who has spent decades reading crime scenes for a living. Retired FBI profiler Jim Clemente reviewed the porch evidence and reached a striking conclusion. He believes only one person carried out Nancy's abduction. His reasoning centers on control. If two people had been holding an 84-year-old woman as they moved her out of her home, he argues, she likely wouldn't have ended up on the ground. But according to Clemente, that's exactly what happened. He described droplets consistent with someone coughing up blood while close to the ground, a detail he says points to a struggle that spiraled outside the offender's control. He also pointed to what wasn't there: no multiple shoe patterns in the blood, no sign of a second person managing the scene. To Clemente, that absence matters just as much as what investigators did find. There's something else now confirmed: that porch blood belongs to Nancy herself. Investigators have said as much publicly, so while the blood tells us what may have physically happened at her front door, it doesn't yet tell us who was responsible. That answer may still rest with the hair, and that hair now sits at a crossroads with 4 possible paths ahead of it. The first is the simplest and the most disappointing. The hair could belong to Nancy, a family member, or someone with an ordinary reason to have been inside her home. If that's the case, this lead quietly closes. The second path is more frustrating. The sample might not match anyone known, yet still be too degraded for a usable DNA profile. That would leave investigators with suspicion, but no direction. The third outcome is a different kind of stall. The lab could produce a profile, only to find no meaningful matches in public genealogy databases. That doesn't mean the sample is worthless. It means the right relative hasn't surfaced yet. Then there's the fourth path, the one everyone is quietly hoping for. The hair doesn't match Nancy, her family, or anyone with an innocent connection to the home. A usable profile emerges. Genealogists begin building family trees, following marriage records, obituaries, and census data until distant branches start to connect. And somewhere in that slow, careful process, a name may finally surface. Even then, that name wouldn't be a conclusion. It would be a lead, one that still requires confirmation through direct DNA testing before it means anything at all. That's how this kind of science works. It doesn't hand investigators an answer. It hands them a direction, and directions take time to follow. That may explain the silence surrounding this case in recent weeks. No new statements, no breaking updates. But silence during an active investigation isn't necessarily a bad sign. Sometimes it means labs are still working. Sometimes it means a lead is being protected from public pressure. For Nancy Guthrie's family, that silence must feel unbearable. But somewhere between a strand of hair and a trail of blood, this case may finally be moving, even if the world outside can't yet see it. If you want to be there the moment new details break in this case, subscribe to 3 True Crime Stories and turn on notifications, because when this story moves, we'll be the first to bring it to you.